We got the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up next. The big move, I guess, yet again, another one of these that was always going to happen. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got his max extension. Well deserved. One of my favorite young guys in the league. Kemba Walker, number 16, which became Alperen Sengun, and a 25 second round pick, whichever is more favorable, from Boston or Memphis, came over for Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 23 second round pick. Subsequently, Kemba Walker got his buyout, and he ended up with the Knicks. Derek Favors and a first, just a classic. This is what the Thunder have done forever. Came over because the Jazz wanted to deduct some tax payment. That first that came with Derek Favors is a 2024 selection, top 10 protected that year, and 25 top 8 protection in 2026 becomes a 2028 second if it's not conveyed. They also gave a 27 second least favorable of the Thunder, Rockets, Pacers, and Heats, and cash to send something back to Utah. Josh Giddey was the pick at number 6. Pretty surprising then. That will factor into my grade. They drafted Trey Mann at number 18. Then we've got Detroit's 2020. This is going to be a mouthful. It's a lot of picks. The Thunder acquired Detroit's 22 first rounder, which has top 16 protection that year, top 18 the next 2, and top 13 in 2025, and top 11 in 26, top 9 in 27. These are the Detroit and Washington picks in the Sengun deal, I'm just now realizing. The protection on the Washington 23 first rounder is top 14 in 23, top 12 in 24, top 10 in 25, and top 8 in 26 for basically Alperen Sengun. They got number 32 in the draft, which was Jeremiah Robinson Earl, for number 34, which is Rokas Jokubaitis, and number 36, which was Deuce McBride, a couple of Knicks. Signed Mike Muscala to a 2-year, $7 million deal with a team option for 22-23. Signed Vit Krejci to a 4-year, $6.4 million deal, and the first year is the minimum, and it's the only one that's fully guaranteed. Less of that in year 2. The final 2 are non-guaranteed. Finally signed Aaron Wiggins to a 2-way. Your notable subtractions are few. Al Horford obviously went back to Boston. Josh Hall was waived after signing a 2-way, and Svi Mikhailuk also no longer on the Thunder. Dan, that was a lot. Most of it was explaining the pick protections in the Sengun deal. What are your thoughts on the Thunder's offseason grade?
I gave them. This is the closest I came to giving an F, and I didn't get there. But
Okay.
they got a D minus. Did you give them an F?
Okay. No, I gave them a D, but I'm glad to hear we were in the same area.
I can still be high on their future because of all these picks that they have, and extending Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the whole trade rumor thing leading up to the draft, it always smelled weird just because the Thunder don't leak stuff out along those lines,
Yeah.
and he is your timeline. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is so young that he is your timeline. But you went through all this, and I get you're not trying to win now, but you went through all this, and you still who do they have on the roster that might be the long-term number 2 running mate for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Josh Giddey, because he was drafted so high, maybe you say him. This is just someone who doesn't look to score. The fact that his first few seconds in Summer League before he got injured included him scoring is actually kind of funny, because that's just not what he's known for. I don't understand it. And then unless we don't know something about Kemba Walker's knees, and I've gone back and forth on this, given how much cap space the Knicks left before they signed Kemba Walker, it seems like they knew it was headed down that path, which I can't imagine that they would do if Kemba's knee was just completely putty at this point. And everything OKC has done has suggested that they're at least going to rehabilitate the value of that veteran or treat them nicely while they're there, and then they're going to flip them later on to a better team and get some value in the process. There are two schools of thought to this. Either you really just didn't believe that Kemba Walker was going to do that because his knee was so far gone, or you were worried about winning too many games because you can't shut down a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander again unless plantar fascia injury crops up, which you knock on wood, hope it does not. So I just don't get what they're doing here. And then to trade for those two, I didn't like that move for Houston, but I'm just even more puzzled by it with OKC, because eventually, you need to start, stop divesting things. Now you've turned number 16 into 2 future firsts, which, maybe both of them will convey, but are they going to be, perhaps they put them over the top in a trade. And that's why this grade could technically be incomplete, because so many of these have to be evaluated years down the line, even looking at their draft picks. I was fine with Trey Mann at number 18. I guess, Kemba Walker, 53.7 million over 2 years. He gave back like 17 million. Was that enough to just have that much dead money on your roster for the next 2 seasons? And I know you're not planning on going anywhere, but like, again, I just, that was very surprising to me that they went that route with him. The other thing, I don't get the let's give up 34 and 36 for Jeremiah Robinson Earl, another wing type player who can't shoot. He did not shoot the 3-ball well in college. He was under 39%. I think he was at 39.4% on 2-point jumpers in college last season. So like, what are you doing here? And again, and this is coming, I'm actually high on their future. And look, the Derek Favors move is fine, because that Utah pick, the Jazz really feel like they're going like a boom or bust route right now. I know that they just, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell are signed until forever, basically. But like, something just feels untenable there if they fall short again. The fact that they couldn't, and I know Donovan Mitchell was banged up, Mike Conley's banged up too. You couldn't beat the Clippers without Kawhi. You couldn't even get them to a game 7. This is from someone who's super high on the Jazz, but to just, hedge against their future for the Thunder, and you do technically need center minutes at this point because you did trade away Al Horford. I'm totally fine with what they did with Derek Favors. But like, there's nothing about this offseason I loved for them, save their extending Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And so this is me grading them in the moment and not their future, which I still think has the potential to be bright. But after all they did this offseason, they just acted like sellers so much. They're nowhere closer to finding that second top tier building block. That's not an insult to Lou Dort. It's not an insult to Teo Maledon. It's not an insult to Alexei Pokusevsky, who I think he's probably the highest upside guy they have after Shai. Am I forgetting about someone? I don't think I am. Maybe it depends on how you feel about Josh Giddey, obviously. So perhaps I end up being wrong there. And the other thing is just like, on a roster that, and I know he didn't shoot the 3-ball too well last season, but he has size, he can defend hard, and has shown he can hit threes at the NBA level, unlike Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who couldn't even hit threes at the college level. Why couldn't they have gone after, like, Svi? Why didn't they want him back? I understand what they're doing, but like, this is too much. Like, you've got to touch too far, because you do have Shai now. He's going to kick in on that max extension after this season. I'm not saying you need to be in a position to win, but you need to at least have someone who is your second guiding light behind him. And I just don't think that they have it. And I would have liked to have seen, of all the moves that they made, they either couldn't have taken the bigger swing at number 6 when you're looking at who was still on the board, or maybe even traded down. Who was taking Josh Giddey in the top 10? Who was taking Josh Giddey in the top 10? So I'm sure they did their due diligence. Again, I think the Thunder are going to be fine long term. I also think they could be in a much more favorable position than they are.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that they're still positioned great. I mean, all those picks are going to theoretically become something. They're clean books, basically. Like all that stuff is still true. Their overall trajectory is fine. I didn't like the Giddey pick. I think for a franchise that has just made a habit out of taking long athletic guys that they hope they can figure out how to teach to play basketball, that ain't Giddey. Now, not that strategy's yielded some, like Terrence Ferguson and Hamidou Diallo, both, that's kind of an example of their type over the last few years. It's different, high in the lottery, obviously, but Kuminga was right there. Kuminga seemed like the pick to me. Everybody was shocked that it was Giddey. So that's one. And then flipping the pick that became Sengun, who we've talked about several times already, for a couple of future firsts that I guess that's more volume to their stockpile. But those are the two reasons
they needed offense, especially they hadn't done this yet, but they went and waived or bought out Kemba Walker. They need offense. So like a scorer, how could you not roll the dice on Sengun there? And that's coming from someone who isn't necessarily in love with him.
I mean, they do if they were trying to win games, which they aren't. It's just the asset that I think just take post summer league where the league saw Sengun look really tantalizing. Like, do you think anyone else in the league would take those 2 shitty, super protected future first now for that guy? Like, of course not.
I
And
don't even know if
everybody,
they're
I think,
are they even shitty though? Is my like there's at some point it's like, don't you have too many?
well, that too. That, I mean, yeah. However you want to say it, they're certainly less valuable to the Thunder than they are to somebody else. Whereas Sengun, like, he might have been the answer to your question of who's the other guy besides SGA that you like see as a building block. He might be that. He might have been that guy just based on the summer league. I don't know. So yeah, I wasn't. It's a D for me. Um, I just those two. Those were their big things that they did, and they didn't make a lot of sense to me.